Some songs don't just play, they stay with you. They find you on your worst night. They remind you who you are. The 1970s gave reggae something the world wasn't ready for. Not just rhythm, not just roots, ballads, real ones, songs that came from real pain, real love, real struggle. But here's what most people never knew. Some of the biggest ballads of that era, the ones you grew up singing, were hiding stories the artists never talked about publicly. Stories of broken promises, lost money, borrowed melodies, and raw human truth wrapped inside 3 minutes of music.
Keeps me alive. I've been lit.
This is not just a countdown. This is the story behind the songs, 10 ballads, 1 decade, and the voices that changed reggae forever. Stay with us, because number 1 you did not see coming. Number 10, Bob Andy and Marcia Griffiths, Young, Gifted, and Black. Close your eyes for a second and think about 1970. Jamaica is still a young country. Independence only came in 1962. And black people all over the world are standing up and saying, "We matter." That energy was in the air, and this song caught it perfectly. This is not a hard song. It is soft, it is warm, 2 voices, a man and a woman singing side by side like equals. And that alone was something beautiful to hear. Yeah, the song was originally written and recorded by Nina Simone in 1969 as a tribute to playwright Lorraine Hansberry. But when Bob Andy and Marcia Griffiths gave it a reggae feel produced by Harry Johnson, also known as Harry J., it became something new. Something Jamaican, something that felt like sunshine and pride at the same time. It went to number 5 on the UK singles chart in 1970. That was a big deal. A reggae duet from Jamaica charting in the UK top 5. People were listening. So here's the fun part. Bob Andy and Marcia Griffiths were not a romantic couple. They were just 2 incredibly gifted singers who had natural chemistry. That chemistry is what you hear in every note of this song. Real respect, real harmony, no performance, just truth. But here's the sad part. After this success, the duo never really built on it the way they should have. They went their separate ways artistically, and this song kind of floated on its own.
I long to know the truth. There were times when
It never got the serious reissue treatment. It never got the documentary. New reggae fans often skip right past it, and that is a real shame because this song is the sound of a people finding their voice, and that should never be forgotten. Number 9, Johnny Nash, I Can See Clearly Now.
I can see clearly now, the rain is gone.
Now, I need you to think about something for a moment because this might surprise you. Did you know that one of the most beloved feel-good songs of the 1970s,
All obstacles in my way.
one that played on pop radio all over the world, was a reggae song? Not reggae-influenced, not reggae-flavored, actually recorded in Jamaica with Jamaican musicians.
Bright, 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 bright sunshine.
Johnny Nash was an American singer from Houston, Texas, but he fell in love with Jamaica in the late 1960s. He moved there, he lived there, he recorded there, and he became one of the first artists to bring Jamaican reggae players onto an international record.
Here is that rainbow I've been
I Can See Clearly Now was recorded in Kingston in 1972 and went to number 1 in both the United States and the United Kingdom. Think about that. A reggae record made in Jamaica and sat at the top of the charts in America.
It's gonna be a bright.
And most people had no idea what they were listening to. The song is about coming through hard times, about waking up one morning and realizing the storm is over.
Look all around, there's nothing but blue sky.
The sun is out. The pain is done. You can breathe again. That message hit people in the chest everywhere.
All obstacles in my way.
Here is the fun fact. Johnny Nash had a close friendship with a young Bob Marley. Nash actually helped introduce Marley to international record labels.
There's nothing but blue sky.
Some historians say that without Johnny Nash, Bob Marley might have found it much harder to get his music heard outside Jamaica. One man's kindness changed reggae history.
I can see all obstacles in my way.
But because Nash was not Jamaican, and because the song got filed under pop on the charts, reggae historians often leave it out of the conversation.
Sunshine in day.
That is not right. This song was made with reggae hands, a reggae heart, and a reggae soul. It belongs on this list.
All right, C-Trends fam, let's keep it real. We're pouring our hearts into bringing you the best celebrity news and music deep dives. What? Check it. A massive 98% of you aren't subscribed yet. Subscribing is how you can truly support us, helping us grow and create even better content. If you're vibing with what we do, take a sec to hit that subscribe button. It's free and makes a huge difference. Plus, ring that notification bell so you never miss out. Let's flip that 98% and build this C-Trends family together. Your support is everything.
Number 8. John Holt, Help Me Make It Through the Night.
Everybody sing it out. Shake it loose and let it fall.
If you grew up in the UK in the 1970s, this song is in your bones. You heard it on the radio, you heard it at the blues dance, you heard it coming through someone's kitchen window on a Sunday morning.
Girls scream.
John Holt had a voice that felt like velvet. Slow, warm, and so honest it almost hurt to listen. He was already a legend in Jamaica from his days with the Paragons in the 1960s.
The early morning light.
But when he started recording covers of American and country songs with a reggae feel, something clicked. Help Me Make It Through the Night was originally written by Chris Christopherson, a country songwriter.
Make it through the night.
But when John Holt recorded it for the album 1000 Volts of Holt in 1973, released as a single, in 1974 it became something else entirely. It peaked at number 6 on the UK singles chart and stayed in the charts for 14 weeks. 14 weeks, friend. That is not a hit. Well, that is a home. The song is simple. A person alone at night asking for comfort. No grand politics, no big statements, just the human need to not feel alone in the dark. And John Holt delivered that feeling better than almost anyone. The fun fact is this. John Holt recorded so many of these cover versions that Trojan Records created a whole series of albums around them. 1000 Volts of Holt, then 2000 Volts, then 3000 Volts. The man was practically a musical power station. But here is the thing, because he was doing covers, some roots reggae fans turned their backs on him. They said he was selling out, going too pop, too smooth. And that criticism followed him for years. The truth, John Holt was simply ahead of his time. What he was building was the foundation of lovers rock, one of reggae's most beloved subgenres. He just never got the credit while it was happening. We are just getting started. Up next, a song pulled straight from the Bible that became one of the most covered reggae records ever made. Number 7, the Melodians, Rivers of Babylon.
It's like a national anthem. Yes.
Some songs are older than the artists who recorded them. This is one of those songs. Rivers of Babylon is built from the words of Psalm 137 in the Bible, the cry of a people taken from their home, sitting by a river in a strange land, weeping. For Jamaican artists steeped in Rastafarian faith, those words hit differently because they were singing about their own history, their own pain. The story of Babylon was not just scripture. It was memory. The Melodians, Brent Dow, Tony Brevet, and Trevor McNaughton recorded this at Studio One in Kingston around 1969 to 1970. Produced by Leslie Kong, one of the most important reggae producers of his era. The harmonies are layered, spiritual, and achingly beautiful. The song reached a whole new audience in 1972 when it appeared on the soundtrack of The Harder They Come, the film that introduced reggae to America and much of Europe. That film changed everything. And Rivers of Babylon was one of its most powerful moments. Then in 1978, the German pop group Boney M took it to number 1 across Europe. Their version sold tens of millions of copies worldwide, but here is the heartbreak. The Melodians, the original artists, barely benefited from that explosion. Royalties were complicated, contracts were old, distribution was limited. And so the men who created one of the most recognized reggae melodies in history watched someone else take it to the top of the world. The song lived. The recognition for them was slow in coming. Next, a band that proved reggae could blend with soul and create something the whole world wanted to dance to. Number 6, Third World, Now That We've Found Love. By 1978, reggae was not just a Jamaican thing anymore, it was everywhere. And Third World were right at the center of that moment. Third World were a Jamaican band with a sound that could not be put in a single box. Reggae, yes, but also soul, also funk, also something that felt like a warm breeze coming through your window on a Friday night.
Come on, baby, when the music's playing, I wanna see you dance, dance, dance.
Now, That We Found Love was originally written by Kenneth Gamble and Leon Huff, the same men behind some of the greatest Philadelphia soul records ever made. It was first recorded by the OJs in 1973, but when Third World made it their own, they put a reggae heartbeat underneath it that made the whole thing breathe differently. The result was a song that radio DJs loved because it worked for pop audiences, and sound system selectors loved it because it had weight and movement. That is a rare thing, a song that plays both sides of the room. Here is what makes this even more interesting. Third World were signed to Island Records, the same label as Bob Marley. They had international distribution.
Let's give love a try. Let your control.
They had a real push behind them, and yet over time their name faded from the mainstream conversation about great 1970s reggae. Maybe it was because they were seen as too polished, too crossover. Roots reggae fans sometimes looked at them sideways. But that judgment missed the point. Music does not have to be hard to be real, and this song is as real as it gets. Coming up, a ballad written from the bottom of a man's heart in a foreign country, alone and nearly broken. This one will stay with you. Number 5, Jimmy Cliff, Many Rivers to Cross.
Many rivers to cross.
Before we go any further, I want you to understand something about this song. Jimmy Cliff did not write this in a comfortable studio surrounded by people who believed in him.
Way over. Wandering up in love.
He wrote this alone. He was a young man from Jamaica who had moved to England trying to make it in the music business, and it was not working. The doors were not opening. The money was not coming.
The white cliffs of Dover.
He was far from home, far from everyone he loved, and he was starting to wonder if he had made the biggest mistake of his life.
Because of my pride.
That is where this song comes from. That hollow, aching place that only people who have truly been tested know about.
Well, I guess
He recorded it in 1969. It was released in 1972 as part of the Harder They Come soundtrack. That film, that soundtrack changed everything. And this ballad was its emotional heart.
just where to begin. Been playing for time.
The production is almost painfully simple. Piano, strings, Jimmy Cliff's voice, nothing to hide behind.
It was so hard to find my way.
Just the truth, out in the open. It has been covered by artists from Joe Cocker to Annie Lennox to UB40. Each one of them heard something in it that they needed to say.
Truth is my redeemer. Sorrow is my companion.
Because that is what a great song does. It gives other people the words they could not find themselves. The reason this song is underrated today is that it lives in the shadow of the full Harder They Come album.
John, wisdom is my capital. Struggle.
People remember the title track. They remember the energy. But the quiet ones, the ones that hurt, sometimes get skipped over. Do not skip this one. We are now in the top 4, and the next entry comes from a woman who made history, and most people still don't know her name. Number 4, Janet Kay, Silly Games. Now listen, this song came at the end of the decade, 1979, and it closed out the 1970s with something that nobody had quite heard before. Janet Kay was a young British woman of Jamaican heritage, born and raised in London. She was not a Jamaican artist. She was not signed to a roots reggae label. She was part of a movement that was being born right there in the UK, Lovers Rock. Lovers Rock was reggae, yes. But it was reggae made by young black British women and men who were singing about their own lives, not Kingston, not Trenchtown, London, Brixton, Hackney, Handsworth, their streets, their love stories, their heartbreaks. Silly Games reached number 2 on the UK singles chart in 1979, and Janet Kay became the first black British female reggae artist to have a top 10 hit in the UK. Read that again. The first. In 1979. That is history.
In my mind, I say, if he makes his move to
And the song is about the emotional back and forth of a relationship that will not quite come together. Both people feel something, but neither one will say it first. If you have ever been there, you know exactly what this song is talking about.
I say, if he makes his move today.
The fun fact, her voice on this record is so precise, so perfectly pitched, that sound engineers still use it as a reference recording. The clarity is stunning even now, over 40 years later. But here's what happened. As dancehall began to rise in the early 1980s, lovers rock got pushed aside. The harder, faster sound took over. And artists like Janet Kay, who had broken serious ground, were left without the recognition they deserved. The movement she helped build quietly disappeared from the history books, but not from the hearts of the people who lived it. We are halfway through the countdown. Which song has hit you hardest so far? Drop it in the comments below. I genuinely want to know. Number 3, Ken Boothe, Everything I Own. Earlier in this video, I told you there were hidden stories. Stories that the artists never talked about publicly. I told you some of what you grew up loving had pain behind it that you never knew. This is that entry. Ken Boothe recorded Everything I Own in Kingston, Jamaica in 1974. The song was originally written by David Gates of the American soft rock band Beres. And here is something beautiful about it. Yet Gates wrote it as a tribute to his father, who had died years before his son found success. He was saying, I would give everything I own to have you back, to hear you say you were proud of me. That kind of love does not need translation. When Ken Boothe recorded it with producer Lloyd Chalmers at Federal Records in Kingston, they gave it a gentle reggae feel. Lloyd Parks played bass. Paul Douglas was on drums, Willie Lindo handled the guitar, and Ken Booth's voice, that deep, warm, and vibrating voice wrapped around the melody like it had always lived there. Trojan Records released it in the United Kingdom. On the 26th of October 1974, it hit number 1 on the UK singles chart, and it stayed there for 3 weeks. 3 weeks at the top of the charts in Britain. Ken Boothe appeared on Top of the Pops. Radio stations played it constantly. It was the biggest reggae moment of the year. Now, here is where the story turns. What Ken Boothe never received a single penny from that number 1 hit. Not one. Trojan Records, the label that distributed the song, collapsed financially before they paid him. The company went under, and when a label goes under, the money does not always find its way to the artist, especially when the artist is a black Jamaican musician with limited legal power in the UK music industry of 1974. There are different versions of exactly what happened in the details. Some accounts say he was owed royalties that were simply swallowed by the collapse. Others suggest the contractual arrangements gave him very little to begin with. What is not disputed is this. The man had a #1 record and walked away with nothing. This was not unusual in reggae history. It was not even unusual in music history broadly. Black artists across every genre, rock, soul, reggae, blues, have this same story. You make the music. Someone else owns it. Someone else gets paid. And the industry politics of the time meant that artists often signed away their rights just to get their music released. The label had the power, the pressing plants, the distribution, the radio connections, and the artist had the talent but not the leverage. What makes Ken Booth's story even more remarkable is what he did not do. He did not walk away bitter. He did not stop singing. He kept recording, kept performing, and kept giving audiences everything he had.
It's gonna be yours.
He was awarded the Jamaican Order of Distinction for his contribution to music, and he continued recording well into the 2000s.
When you're in love.
But every time you hear Everything I Own, remember what it cost him. Remember that the beauty in his voice was real. The pain behind it was real too.
It's gonna be yours forevermore.
That is what reggae music has always carried. The joy and the injustice side by side, always. Two songs left, and both of them come from the same man. The man who took reggae to the whole world. Do not go anywhere. Number 2, Bob Marley and the Wailers, Is This Love? Now, you might be thinking, of course Bob Marley is on this list, but I want you to hear why this particular song is here. By 1978, Bob Marley was a global superstar. The political songs, the protest anthems, the spiritual fire, the world knew that version of him. But Is This Love is something different. This is not a man with a message for the world. This is just a man in love asking a quiet question. It came from the Kaya album, an album that confused some of his hardcore fans when it was released. Where were the protest songs? Where was the fire? But Marley was doing something important. He was showing you the whole person. The man who wanted justice and the man who wanted to sit with someone he loved and feel safe. Both things are true at the same time.
Willing and able.
The production is smooth. Barrett Brothers driving the rhythm. The melody lifts and glides like it has no weight at all. And the lyrics are simple enough that a child could understand them and deep enough that an old man would nod slowly when he hears them.
I wanna love you. I wanna love and treat.
It remains one of the most played reggae songs on radio today, nearly 50 years after it was recorded. The fun fact is this: Marley reportedly wrote this song with a very specific person in mind. The details of that story have never been fully told publicly. But those who were close to him say the feeling in his voice was completely real. That you can hear it, you always could. Is This Love reminds you that reggae was never just one thing. It had room for rage, and it had room for this. A man, a melody, and a feeling he could not explain any other way. And now we reach number 1. The live recording, the song that stopped everything, and the story behind it that most people still get wrong. Number 1, Bob Marley and the Wailers. No Woman, No Cry. The live version, recorded at the Lyceum Ballroom in London on July 18th, 1975. Let me tell you something about this recording. There are songs, and then there are moments. This is a moment. The Lyceum concert that night in London was part of Marley's Natty Dread tour. The crowd was full of young black British people, many of them children of Caribbean immigrants. People who had grown up between two worlds. Oh, Jamaica in their hearts, London in their shoes, and when Marley started singing, it was like he was singing directly to them. The song is set in Trenchtown, Kingston, one of the poorest, most overcrowded areas of Jamaica. A yard, a fire burning, friends sharing what little they have, a woman who is struggling, and a voice telling her it is going to be all right. Simple words, enormous weight. Now here is something that surprises many people. The song is officially credited as written by Vincent Ford. Ford was not a musician. He ran a community kitchen in Trenchtown, a place called Auntie Ivy's Cook Shop that fed people who had nothing. There are different versions of why his name is on the song. Some people say Marley genuinely gave Ford the credit as a way of ensuring the man had income for the rest of his life. An act of generosity from someone who had once been hungry himself. And others say the arrangement was more complicated, tied to publishing, to business, to the relationships inside Marley's inner circle. What is clear is that Marley was the creative force behind the song. He sang it. He shaped it, he poured himself into it, and whether the credit arrangement was pure generosity or something more layered,
Great future you get in this info.
It reflects the complicated world that reggae artists lived in, where business and brotherhood were always tangled together. The live version charted in the UK after its release on the Live album, and it took off in a way that studio recordings often cannot, because you can hear the crowd, you can hear the room, you can feel the moment.
In the town, the government yard in Trent.
There is a place in that recording near the end where the crowd joins in and the whole building becomes one voice. You can hear it even on a recording from 50 years ago. That sound is irreplaceable.
Remember used to sit when we.
For millions of people around the world, this is not just the greatest reggae ballad of the 1970s, it is simply the greatest reggae song ever made. And when you hear it, really hear it, it is hard to argue.